Mr. Feynman wasn't joking. Chapter 10. The Escape Route. Choosing reality over the machine. If a system persists because it is structurally self-protecting, then the most realistic path forward is not to fix it from within, but to build and choose alternatives that run on different premises. The goal is not rebellion for its own sake. It is education that actually educates, conceptual development, moral independence, and the capacity to think in reality. That escape can take many forms: small schools with coherent philosophy, competency-based placement, serious curriculum, and clear expectations, or families who refuse to let credential theater replace real learning. The common denominator is not a brand. It is a commitment, evidence of understanding over performance, and virtue as the guardrail that keeps powerful tools from becoming instruments of evasion. This book has been an answer to a single question. If the prevailing education model produces so much disappointment, why does it persist? The answer is not one villain or one policy, but a set of forces that reinforce each other. Inertia, structures that keep moving; incentives, metrics that steer behavior; bureaucracy, growth that absorbs energy; and fragmented accountability, responsibility that dissolves into a crowd. But an escape route is not a slogan. It is a different set of premises, embodied in daily decisions, that keep a child's mind connected to reality even when the machinery around them rewards performance instead. Throughout this book, a pattern has surfaced. Whenever the system had to choose between reality and appearance, it chose appearance. It chose age grading over cognitive readiness, coverage over understanding, proxies over genuine evidence, bureaucratic growth over direct contact between a good teacher and a real child. And when AI arrived, the same habit reappeared. Institutions grabbed the most visible uses first: automated grading, polished outputs, productivity dashboards, because those were easiest to defend and display. Here is one escape route. You can refuse to play that game. You can decide, at the level you control, your classroom, your school, your family, that education will mean something different. It will mean cultivating the conceptual faculty, the ability to form concepts from reality, integrate them into principles, and use those principles to think and act. In that world, performance metrics become tools, not gods. AI becomes a powerful servant, not a quiet master. Seen that way, the AI era does not create the crisis. It clarifies it. A system built on performance as the goal will find in AI a perfect ally. It can automate the appearance of competence at low cost and high speed. It can generate essays, projects, explanations, and even reflection on demand. The more the institution rewards those artifacts, the easier it becomes for students to outsource the work of thinking while still collecting the tokens of success. A system built on understanding as the goal will use AI differently. It will treat AI as an accelerant for practice and feedback, not as a substitute for cognition. It will ask, what must the student do without the tool to show that the concept is real inside their mind? What kinds of help clarify thinking, and what kinds of help short-circuit it? That is why the escape route is not mainly technological. It is moral and conceptual. You have seen, in earlier chapters, that the only reliable guardrails in an era of cheap performance are virtues that live inside the student and the adults around them. Rationality, honesty, independence, integrity, justice, productiveness, and pride are not abstract ornaments. They are the internal control system that keeps a mind anchored to reality when shortcuts are easy and plausible deniability is everywhere. Without that control system, any model of schooling, traditional, progressive, or AI-infused, will drift back toward theater. If you accept that, a hard question follows. Where will such a model come from? It will not come from one more reform bolted onto the existing machinery or electing new school board members. The earlier chapters should have made that clear. Inertia will digest it, incentives will warp it, bureaucracy will feed on it, and fragmented accountability will protect everyone from responsibility when it fails. The escape route has to be designed outside those premises. That is the task of the next volume. If this book was the physicist's book, taking the machine apart, naming its forces, and showing why its outputs are so often anti-conceptual, the next book is the architect's. It will treat AI in education as a philosophical test, a way of exposing whether a school is serious about conceptual development and virtue, or whether it is still organized around proxies and appearances. It will lay out a coherent model of education in the AI era, how content is chosen and sequenced, how methods cultivate concepts rather than slogans, how the 7 virtues become guardrails in daily practice, and how AI is constrained to help rather than hollow out the mind. That design work will not be enough by itself. Blueprints are necessary, but they do not pour concrete, wire classrooms, or train adults. A third volume will take up that job at a different level. The contractor's work of building, coordinating, and maintaining institutions that can actually live on these premises, schools, programs, networks, and family practices that turn architecture into lived reality. Even then, the final mechanics will be parents and teachers, because only they stand close enough to a child's mind to insist, day after day, that understanding comes first. You do not need to wait for the release of those books to begin. If this volume has done its work, you now see the cracks that Feynman already saw back in the 1950s, not as isolated failures, but as predictable outputs of a design. You see why reforms keep being absorbed, why AI slots so comfortably into the wrong model, and why the only genuine escape route begins with a refusal to treat performance as a proxy for thought. The system will go on telling you that this is unrealistic. It will say that age grading is non-negotiable, that coverage is the same as progress, that standardized scores are the best we can do, that AI will personalize learning if you just bolt it onto the old machine. It will say that a child who can perform on paper must understand, and that to demand more is unfair. You now know better. You have seen students who can say the words and cannot use the ideas. You have seen how the machinery rewards that pattern and how AI makes it easier to fake. You have also seen, in outline, what it would mean to protect the one thing that cannot be automated, a mind that loves reality enough to do its own work. That is the escape route. Not a new app, not a new slogan, not a more charismatic reformer, but a decision to choose reality over the machine, understanding over performance, virtue over expedience, even when the system around you pulls the other way. The rest of this series will spell out how to design and build on that decision. This volume's job was simpler and harder, to make sure you can no longer honestly pretend that the old machine is value neutral or that its outputs are inevitable. From here, the question is not whether the system can be reformed. The question is what you will now count as education for your children and what you are willing to refuse on their behalf. Epilogue. What this book just did. By now, you have seen enough of the machine to stop treating its failures as accidents. You have seen how inertia, incentives, bureaucracy, and fragmented accountability repeatedly produce the same anti-conceptual outcomes, and how AI simply accelerates whatever those premises already reward. This book had one job: to make that system legible and morally unmistakable. You now know what it is built to produce, what it quietly destroys in a child's mind, and why bolting new programs or new technologies onto the same structure will not change its essence. You have, in other words, a clear sense of what you can no longer honestly pretend not to see. The line you choose. Once you accept that, a line appears that no expert, no institution, no AI can step over for you. It is the line where you decide what will count as education for your child and what will not. You have watched how easily words can replace concepts, how smoothly performance can replace understanding, how naturally tools can become excuses. In an AI era, that drift speeds up. The only durable protection is a refusal. You will not accept polished outputs as proof of thinking. You will not confuse seat time with growth. You will not call a child educated who cannot use ideas to understand reality. From diagnosis to design and construction. This volume was the physicists. It took the system apart and showed you the forces at work. The next volume is the architects. It will treat AI in education as a philosophical test and lay out a coherent design for schooling in this era. Content sequenced for conceptual growth. Methods that move students from concrete to abstract. Virtue as an internal control system, an AI constrained to serve cognition instead of displacing it. A third volume will be the contractors. It will take those blueprints and focus on building and maintaining institutions that actually live on these premises, schools, programs, and family practices that do not quietly slide back into credential theater. The wager you now share. Underneath the structure and the series plan is a wager you now share whether you meant to or not. It is the wager that our children can learn to think, that they can learn to love reality more than approval, that they can come to prefer earned competence to purchased appearance, and that a school built on those premises can remain demanding without being cruel, because it is finally aligned with what the human mind is for. The next books will show how to design and build on that wager at scale. This one ends with a simpler demand. Do not hand your child's mind back to the machine you now understand.